Hello, and welcome to If This Is True. It's my space, really, where I can talk in detail on subjects that matter to me and interest me, but I can't always explain fully on a post on social media. And today we're going to do the WEF, not the bugs and the owning nothing, but the story of real influence, like a spider's web. That's been happening for over 50 years. Did you know that? 50 years this psycho has been involved in our life. Keep watching. In 1978, Klaus Schwab launched what he called the European Management Forum. Previously, he'd been a lecturer, and his background was academic and theoretical rather than rooted in any direct experience. In fact, he'd never worked in a private business. But he does hold multiple degrees in economics, engineering, and public administration. So, of course, that makes him entirely better than you. Klaus, through the decades, has exhibited hugely narcissistic personality traits that lead him to believe that he alone can shape the world for the better, much better than anyone else. But you see, he wasn't building a simple forum talking shop. No, he envisioned something much more audacious, a gathering that would shape the world from the top down rather from the bottom up, which is what we thought democracy was. Not according to Klaus. See, his loose networking group quickly became known as the World Economic Forum, and it's now so powerful that decisions about our lives and our futures are made by these people and these corporations that we would never elect, to benefit themselves, following Klaus's theory of social evolution. And for nearly 50 years, quietly, they've become the most influential organization on the planet. See, last year, his not-for-profit organization brought in more than $400 million in revenue, and £178 million sits in cash reserves, all paid for by corporations that want him to do their bidding. That's a lot of cash for a business that says it makes no profit for the good of you. By the 1980s, when Bananarama was filling my room,
she's got it. Yeah, baby, she's got it.
Klaus had filled his room with big names like Henry Kissinger, Margaret Thatcher, Helmut Kohl, and our very own Prince Charming Charles. And it was here that leaders could shape and coordinate policy in a far cozier setting, more discreet and certainly less messy than asking their own people or parliament. And in these early years, Schwab began bridging the corporate world with governments, and Davos became the stage for aligning profits with policies. It was here that stakeholder capitalism began to take shape. An idea that promised to give everybody a voice in corporate decisions, but only if they were a stakeholder, which we aren't. Klaus talks about it 20 years later, right here.
Let's say, a differentiation. On the one hand, we have state capitalism. On the other hand, we have shareholder or private capitalism. So it's a clash between two systems. I believe that state capitalism in the short term provides certain advantages because you can mobilize in a concentrated way a lot of resources to reach a specific objective. But I believe that the future is not state capitalism or shareholder capitalism. The future is what I call stakeholder capitalism, which is combined with the social responsibility.
But in practice, of course, it meant giving corporations a platform to collaborate, push governments, and it created a gigantic, powerful, controlling club, more powerful than any traditional lobbying group. It became where unelected voices and money held power over the public. And even back in the 80s, the World Economic Forum was more than a think tank because it had begun to develop government toolkits, which were like step-by-step policy blueprints. You don't need to think about it, guys. Just follow what we say. They weren't suggestions. They're actual full-on, very thick books of this is your new policy. And skip forward to now, did you know that the World Economic Forum played a central part in our online harms bill, a bill that will criminalise dissent and maybe end free speech? It isn't a coincidence that Ofcom's chief exec sits on the WEF Online Safety Board. They wrote it together. And our government, along with many others, lazily accepted these policies because it meant less work for them, right? And if you think these are the ramblings of a conspiracy theorist, go and check your own government's website, the white papers, the policies driving ideas such as transport, 15-minute cities, digital ID, they're all there, mimicking each other in exactly the same format. Every country in lockstep. It started 50 years ago. Through the 1990s and the early 2000s, they continued to grow in influence, and suddenly global health entered the arena. This was a platform for partnerships like Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, launched with backing from Bill Gates and had heavy World Economic Forum endorsement. They together created Gavi's goal to increase access to vaccines worldwide, a noble mission. But one that meant global health policy began to shift from national control to Davos corporate pharma influence models, working closely with the World Health Organization to create an industrial pharma, all in the guise of equality. It began right here. Through Gavi and the WEF, pharmaceutical companies found a global distribution channel for their vaccines way before COVID, all backed by the WHO. And the government bowed down en masse. All their scientists worked there after all. Same time, WEF did food, aiming to rethink how the world feeds itself through projects like Food Systems Initiative. They proposed changes in agriculture and started promoting lab-grown protein and sustainable farming. Fast forward now to 2022, and that became the 4 Food Hubs Initiative. And it was pushed by leaders worldwide, including the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, who, incidentally, is now the Secretary General of NATO. Greasy palm. Sidebar, Your Honour. The World Economic Forum has an indirect but influential relationship with NATO on global security, technology and policy.
That was a great decision because for us, NATO means peace, means security and stability and prosperity.
Really? Yeah. The result of the food systems is that small farms faced harsher regulatory issues, and it disrupted their ability to get to market through these shrunken supply chains. Now, the farmers saw this and they protested this. In fact, thousands of them have taken to the roads to protest over the past 4 or 5 years. Britain's about to follow suit now, as Britain also falls in line. They haven't changed their policy, though. Farmers are still mostly ignored or paid off with solar farm contracts. We'll talk about that later. By 2015, a whole 9 years ago, the UN had released Agenda 2030, a sweeping framework that promised a sustainable Earth, equality, and fighting climate change. And the World Economic Forum was right there alongside the UN, pushing governments to align with this vision. In fact, Agenda 30 became the new guiding principle, but helping them did require help. And they, of course, turned to Davos and the World Economic Forum, and they positioned themselves as its chief partner, bringing in financial dynasties like Rockefeller, Rothschilds, Vanguard, and BlackRock, figures like Soros, all threw their weight behind these initiatives at Davos. Their influence now extended to education, healthcare, religion, influencing ethics in partnerships with religious groups. We'll talk more on God in a minute. Also at this time, they became significantly involved in shaping discussions that led to the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, shaping the climate narrative. In the years preceding the Paris climate talks, Klaus had actively promoted climate action under his Global Climate Change Initiative with old Al Gore. And they brought together private and public sector leaders to advocate the policies in line with the IPCC's manipulated recommendations. And whilst the World Economic Forum didn't directly draft the agreement, it played a pivotal role among influential business leaders, politicians, and NGOs in the lead up to signing that accord. And that accord has led directly to the net zero insane mania of today. Of course, this Young Global Leaders Programme, which although established in 2004, by 2014 had spread to 100 countries, with Jacinda Ardern graduating in 2014, and of course Macron in 2016. And whilst Keir Starmer was never chosen as a global leader of any description, he did say that he preferred Davos to Westminster, meaning he preferred the will of global corporates to the will of the people. Here.
I'll ask you quickly, you have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained, and it's closed, and we're not having meaning. Once you get out of Westminster, whether it's Davos or anywhere else, you actually engage with people that you can see working with in the future. Westminster is just a tribal shouting place.
We might as well call it Westminster at this point. Of course, Klaus was building not only an empire, but a legacy, employing his children, even employing Rothschilds. They were never to be elected, just handed down. Let's get back to God. By the 2020s, the WEF had established a new department called the Faith in Action Initiative, aiming to create, a moral framework toolkit that aligned with global governance agendas under Agenda 30. This religious pillar included partnerships with faith leaders and interfaith organizations to address social, economic, and environmental changes. Representatives from the Muslim, Jewish, Christian, and other religious communities had all been engaged by the WEF to collaborate on global issues, promote shared values, such as progressive policies. Remember, no religion is a democracy. You just do as you are told. So the very last bastion of human freedom, after all, they had influence in every other area of your life, was religion. The freedom to choose your own spiritual path was subtly brought into alignment with Agenda 30 principles by the WEF. Even the Pope, who'd initially criticized them, was soon brought into line, supporting its social vision. You only have to look at how quickly new interpretations of the Christian Bible were embraced by the Church of England to see the depth of its control. No corner of the human experience was left untouched, particularly in the West. From how we eat to the medicines we take, how we spend our free time, where we travel, how we worship, every aspect controlled by policies crafted by these people in Davos. You didn't elect them. They decided to rule over you. And by 2020, citizens in greater numbers began to notice what was happening, and they were shouted down as conspiracy theorists and nut jobs, but they weren't, because they'd seen the plans set in place nearly 50 years ago becoming mainstream. And as COVID controls were rolled out, Klaus's book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, which had originally been printed in 2016, was back on the shelves. His vision of the future was a dependence on technology for great profit for his friends, where digital IDs, health records, and surveillance would become as fundamental as learning how to read. You'd never know any different. And I'm struck that his book of perilous predictions was brought about because of his meddling in the first place. And what you might not be aware of here is that back in 2017, a few years ago before COVID, and on the back of the book, he created another department, one called the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, C4IR, which became seamlessly woven into government agendas, including yours. Because in the UK, C4IR operates with taxpayer-funded Innovate UK, and it collaborates with government agencies like the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, embedding digital governance and data collection policies directly into the UK's national AI strategy. They've done it. These digital IDs and AI-driven governance structures promise efficiency, but they come with a price. You will no longer have privacy and autonomy as basic human rights. He knew that. And in order to force these changes, censorship of information and speech will quash dissent, as we see here with the Chief Marketing Director of the UN explaining how they own the science because they have an agreement with Google to push any dissent down the search engine so you can't find it.
You know, we partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. You know, we own the science, and we think that the world, you know, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do. But again, it's a huge challenge that I think all sectors of society need to be very active in.
And now, in 2024? Well, now the World Economic Forum's videos are slick, their communications are lovely, they relay great propaganda to the masses, they may be beautiful and fluffy, some are even quite balanced and thoughtful, others of course are bonkers. No, we're not eating bugs. But they want you to imagine a world of pure harmony and love. But it's just window dressing for Klaus's world. A world that sees countries become identikits of each other, which outlaws traditions just as Mao did in China, and enforces exactly the same principles and behaviors on individuals globally. Where you are no longer an individual, you're simply an organic mass of sameness. In this global world order, democracy has been quietly replaced by elitocracy. Invented a new word. Elitocracy, a government of the many, for the few, by the few, punching down the many, pacifying them with videos and pills like Noah Harari, their great prophet, says. And who knows what the next decade will bring? But highlighting its web of influence is a good thing. After all, the things you can't discuss or debate are the very things that need the most discussion and debate. And I want you to understand that the propaganda you're seeing is being perpetrated by people who do not have your best interests at heart. They have profit at heart, and you're just collateral damage. And they just need to keep you kind of moving along. I don't want to be moved along. I don't want these people infiltrating my cabinets. I don't want them controlling policies and toolkits that my government might look at. I don't want their stakeholder capitalism. Do you? Tell me what you think. What do you think about elitocracy? New word. It is brilliant, right? How would you change it? How do we stop our government being so weak, so led by the nose? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, tell me what you think. Come and join me again. It was great to see you on If This Is True.